Hi, welcome back to Career Goals. Today, my guest is a chartered accountant, YouTuber and blogger, Devamsha. How are you?
Hi Kelsey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Just for the viewers at home, can you tell them a bit about your career journey so far and what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. So, I started out at the Big Four doing an audit grad scheme. So that led me to, getting my CA qualification. I was doing accounting and audit work for 3 years. And then I pivoted within the same firm into tech consulting. So they have like a little arm within consulting that focuses on kind of digital transformation and stuff like that. I hate to use buzzwords. So I'm a management consultant there. And when this pivot happened, I also started my YouTube channel all about like career advice and money advice at the time, because that's the stuff I was kind of struggling with at the time. And then that kind of has just spiraled, as it naturally does, into all the other social platforms. So I now do loads of video content everywhere, but that has taken me to sitting on this couch today.
That's really interesting because like when you went into like accounting, did you expect it to take that kind of technical time? Or did you even know that there was a technical side to it?
Not at all. And like the pivot into tech or the consulting side only came because when I was like 13, 14, instead of playing outside, I decided to learn how to code WordPress themes. And it all started, I think it started on like Neopets or Pixo.
Oh, Pixar.
Or something like that, yeah, where you could like customize the theme of something, and that just spiraled into like full on trying to sell templates as a 14-year-old. And I always kept that like skill set because I had my domain name and I kept a little blog, and I used to just put stuff about like my holidays, and it started to turn into career advice. But I had that skill set and I inquired about it at work. When I was doing the accounting work, I kind of asked like, are there any extracurricular things I can get involved with that include some kind of design? And no one could ever think of a way for me to do it within like the accounting service line. But I just happened to poke around a little bit more with the like consulting leadership team and ask, do these skills come in handy anywhere, and can it lead me down like a different career path where I can like just skip out those first few years, because I thought there were a couple of transferable things I'd learned in accounting for me. So it was a case of like, I realized I wanted to change, knew I had these skills, and then just took a little bit of a risk in pursuing them without like formal CV experience.
What made you go into accounting, like in general, because you're quite tech savvy and you've been interested in tech, so what made you go down that route to begin with?
So going back to when I was doing all this coding and website design, I asked my parents, like, could I actually be a graphic designer? As a 14-year-old, I was thinking about where that could take me. And they said no, because it wasn't, and when I say they say yes and no, it was very like black and white, because I'm the eldest as well. So they were new in this country, like they were new to the education system. They just wanted me to find my footing in a stable career that had potential for like, that had lucrative potential, I guess. And at that time, they wanted me to be a doctor, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I spent a lot of my like school years trying to study science, trying to get into those subjects and like be good at them, and I just consistently failed. And what I was doing really well in was business and economics at the time, business studies. So my mum suggested, and I suggested economics because it was quite broad, and I could maybe find something or a career to go in then. And my mum in particular was like, okay, we need a post-grad qualification. You need to be more specific at uni, so we're going to do accounting. So that's what then led me into actually applying for, UCAS, like applying for the specific courses, applying for the accountancy courses that would lead me to the grad schemes a bit easier, because I think some of them have like modules and stuff that correlate. So that's what essentially got me into it, because then I ended up going to uni, studying accounting and legal studies. Did quite well because I put my head down, and I got my grad job at a Big Four, which was really good, but it was always in the back of my mind that like I needed to chase the stability and this potential to make lots of money as a chartered accountant because that's what would set me up well in life.
Do you enjoy it at least?
I think it was difficult because like the auditing side, like public accounting, that was difficult to enjoy just because of the seasonal pressure that you have that naturally happens when you're in firm side like auditing. I think it takes a certain type of personality and like work ethic to be able to kind of do that and have maybe a bit more work-life balance, but I struggled with it a little bit. However, the actual knowledge, like the accounting qualification and what we had to study to get it, and understanding how businesses actually work and the mechanics behind the numbers and the context behind the numbers, I found that really interesting, and that's kind of something I really enjoy now. Is like I like learning about business and entrepreneurship, and that side I really enjoy, but the auditing maybe not so much.
Yeah, and that's with any career really, is it? Like it's hit and miss. So obviously you've joined one of the big four, you work in this like good job, but then when you've asked them for help like with the getting a more digital role, since doing that and you've done your YouTube stuff, have your workplace been supportive? Because I know on YouTube you talk about financial advice and all that type of stuff. Like, are you work supportive about that side, like putting your face out there and saying and giving tips, finance tips specifically when you're working at a finance place?
Yeah, they've been quite supportive. Like when I was doing a lot of the career specific videos, and at that time I was working in audit, and I was doing a lot of kind of CA specific like revision and study tips videos as well. And it was actually the senior leadership team that I worked with at the time. They were talking about how in their circles they found this video, and they know that I work the person in the video worked at the firm, and they were kind of saying it's quite cool that I'm talking about the career in a context where like young people can understand a bit better what we do, because I obviously never really paint and will not paint things in a hugely negative light. It was always, okay, I've had this experience, now what can I and everyone else learn from it? And on the audit side, they were super supportive, and even now to this day, my colleagues are super supportive. When they find out that I have all these things going on, they bring it to me, and like we talk about it in like a kind of positive way, but I never go around and kind of make it very obvious that it's part of my personal brand. I kind of leave it there to be discovered.
yeah, like you don't brag about it.
Yeah.
What's it like working for one of the big four?
I think it's really amazing because the kind of work and like the projects that you can get involved with are with some amazing companies, and the work you do helps you really understand how some of these massive companies operate and how they hit their own goals, which can be super interesting to learn from. And I think with big four environments, the caliber of people that you work with and work under is sometimes crazy as well. Like I've worked with people that I've learned so much from and I respect so much, and I learn a lot of things from them that I go on to kind of share in my content. So I think working for a big four is awesome. It's demanding as well, and I think that's just part and parcel of the kind of impact of the work that you do, but I've found it really amazing so far.
What's the transition been like to work for such like a in a demanding role to then also focusing on your social media?
It's been nothing short of just really hard to manage and crazy. And it's all my fault because I've done it to myself. But before I'd started my socials, work was demanding itself because it was audit as well. So the hours were very kind of unpredictable. And obviously it was my first experience for corporate job. So it was new and hard to manage. So it was difficult, full stop. And then I started my socials, and it's really forced me to learn about what productivity actually means and how to actually balance a week, and also how to actually be efficient with what I'm doing. It's taught me that work isn't 9 to 5, it's actually getting things done to a certain quality so that other pieces of work can then move forward, and you're actually kind of helping the wheel turn. So in that sense, it's been really beneficial because I've learned a lot about how to actually get work done, but it's also been super hard to manage because, I mean, you only have so many hours in a week. And I feel like the pressure of social media is also building more and more these days anyway. You always have to churn out more content at higher rate on more platforms. So it's difficult to manage that. And I think I'm still trying to figure out what, my perfect week looks like, and where it would take me. But I'm managing. I'm still breathing. I think my head's just over the water.
I know, and I can imagine as well, like with social media, things like videos are now performing best. And then is it harder, because I can imagine it takes a lot longer to film a video than take a picture and write a caption.
Yeah.
So is stuff like that really difficult to keep up with?
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's the part I really love. Like you said, like I get to flex my creativity muscle with the video creation part of how to translate money topics and sharing career advice as well. I think video is where my personal passion is and how I want to make that content. So I think that personal passion is probably what is driving me to consistently week on week torture myself with this unmanageable schedule. But yeah, I think I'm glad I have that passion to actually keep me going, because yeah, I think I'd probably reach burnout without the inside drive to actually get the content out at a good quality.
So we're just going to jump straight into a game. Never Have I Ever. Have you ever played it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a really easy version. So you can have a paddle there.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll read out a statement. If you have, just green, I have. If you haven't, red, I haven't. And then we'll talk about it. Really
Okay.
simple. So never have I ever made a career move to appease family or friends. I think you've just done
I think I've just done a spiel on that. Yeah. It's difficult because I've thought about this for a long time. I still think about it because it was 3 years. I say 3 years if it's like a massive portion of life. 3 years is nothing in the long run, but it was 3 years that I was studying so hard and we were working such long hours. And I always think, would I be further ahead in like the corporate ladder if I just took the risk and kind of said no to my parents when I graduated instead of 3 years after? And I actually think now I don't regret it, because I don't think I'd be here if I didn't do that. I don't think I would have started my social media channels. I don't think I would understand businesses the way I do now, because I have an actual qualification in accounting. Like I learned so much. Had to learn so much about how businesses work that will definitely come in handy in the future, I think. So I think I'm not in a position anymore where I look back with regret.
And like with what you do now, do you think that, obviously you would say that there's kind of skills anyway because you're talking about finance in a lot of your videos, but do you think there's any transferable skills that you picked up from studying accounting, from working in finance, and then the YouTube and video side of stuff? Do you think there's transferable skills there?
100%. I think I leaned on the transferability of my experience in accounting a lot when I was doing the interviews for my transfer into consulting, and I've picked up so many other skills as well just from doing the social media work. But the accounting transferable skills, it was a lot of like the soft skills that I'd learned, like communication and like speaking to like quite senior people when you're quite junior yourself, having to like bridge that gap in communication style and actually getting information you need from the right people. Like figuring that out and learning how to do that is a skill you have to fine tune, I think. So that was definitely one of the skills I think I use now day to day, and I probably will use like even not in my consulting career. And also just kind of understanding logic and like nuance behind numbers. I think that's a skill because it's so easy to have like a spreadsheet of information in front of you and kind of just look at the numbers, but I think it's a skill to actually take that and like turn it into a story you can tell people that aren't necessarily numbers people as well. So I think that's a really good transferable skill I've picked up.
Yeah, I do think, like, I hear this a lot, like if you work in accounting and finance, you have those storytelling abilities, and then it's like if we're putting what you do on social media, telling a story and exactly what you've just said, like explaining complicated information in an easy way. Even things like, so if with social media, you can monetize from that, and then the skills you have from accounting is going to help with tax and stuff like that. So it's a good one. Never have I ever gone way over budget on something that I really wanted. Yeah. Because I've seen your Instagram, like I'm your target audience for your Instagram. Like I make all the finance mistakes and stuff, but then I think people watching would usually think someone like you knows exactly how you should manage money and budget and stuff, like that you make no mistakes. But
I can't listen to you say that about me, because I was also you. And there's no way I could make the content I make now unless I'd made all those mistakes. Like all of my content is based on previous dev. And I know that a lot of people are previous dev in terms of the mistakes you make, because it's so easy. And also we aren't taught about personal finance at all when we're younger. So young people make the most mistakes and have the most to learn at the same time. So yeah, I have definitely made the biggest mistakes. And I think I used to go, well, I had no budget to go over when I was younger. So, I mean, if the line is 0, I was consistently like going over.
Yeah, I know, I'm exactly like that. And because, like you've just said, that you've made those mistakes, and then is that what motivated you to talk about that type of stuff? Like, oh, I wish I knew that type of information. I wish I knew this. I wish someone else told me this.
Yeah, I think it's a case of like, of course, I wish I knew this, so I didn't make the mistakes, which have cost me money and probably credit score impact somewhere, which I fix now. But I think I'm an eldest daughter. I'm a Virgo. I love like giving information and like giving advice and trying to help you make the right decision. My siblings probably know it and hate me for it. But that's kind of honestly what drives a lot of all my social media. I love sharing my lessons. I love just oversharing probably a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good quality to have, I'd say.
I would agree.
Yeah. Never have I ever regretted a career move.
Probably middle, but like there. So obviously I said like I feel like I don't regret it anymore. I know I shouldn't regret it. But there's always that thought in my mind.
Yeah,
that sits there.
If you'd made like your own, because it's weird, because like everything always has a like fun way of working out.
Yeah.
But then would you have gone it the other way? And it's things like, because you're doing so well on social media now, you wouldn't know all this finance stuff before. So then what would you?
Yeah, because I would have probably earned more money. Consulting, maybe. But it's like the Chinese farmer proverb. Have you heard of that? I'm not going to try and explain it. I think the gist of it is like there's always a reason for everything happening.
Yeah.
So there's no point in regretting any kind of action in your life. I think I've just kind of paraphrased really badly there, but.
I'm going to move to industry myths. So what I'll do is I'll read out a statement and just let me know if you think it's a myth or true. There's no right or wrong answer, it's just your opinion. So the first one is, finance is a stagnant field with no room for innovation.
That would definitely be false, I think. Yeah, I feel like saying finance can't innovate, it's just wrong. Because there's just been a lot of innovation in the industry recently. If you think even like with personal finance apps and like open banking and being able to share your data, like that's an innovation in finance. If you take it down to like detail level, when I was working in accounting, while I was there, was in the space of 3 years, I think we changed the software that we used a little bit and it improved. So that's still innovation in finance, in like the way that finance professionals actually did their work. But yeah, I think personally, I think the industry as a whole is far too driven by like consumer behavior, which is changing all the time, to be stagnant. I think so, yeah, massive myth.
Yeah, and what would you say to people? Like, say if, because I agree with that. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. Like, finance is constantly evolving. But say if someone wanted to go into that industry and was more kind of traditional and wanted to be more traditional and do pen to paper accounting, do you think, is that possible now to still do that, or is it a bit like if you want to go into the industry you need to grow with the industry?
Yeah, no, I know what you're trying to say. I think there's probably a way to like minimize how much change you have to deal with if you're someone who's trying to avoid all of that, because there's definitely industries that are way more behind than others, and with that you'll have companies that are way more behind than others, so you'll have little finance departments who are doing things like when I was an auditor, we had loads of clients who still kind of kept paper records and stuff. Like there's such a range of businesses in different industries that you'll be able to find one that isn't. And in the same way that on the flip side, there's so many like insane creative startups based on all these innovative ways to kind of disrupt the industry. But I think there's room for both. To have a job in both.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because like everything is evolving. It's a bit like it's inevitable that something's gonna have to change, but then there's still room, like you just said, for people to still put pen and paper together if needed.
I feel like the curriculum's changing a little bit as well, though, for like young not even just young accountants, but accountants who are training. I know that like the CA qualification, a couple of people who joined after I did, they were doing more technical modules that I didn't have to do, and that's only a space of like in 3 years that the curriculum itself changed. So hopefully people don't feel like their actual education and abilities are behind the actual industry and how it's moving.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The next statement is, working in finance means you'll find it harder to take holidays.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can interpret this like whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay, so it has to be like trolls or fru, because I think it depends again where you work. I hate to say it depends because that's such an annoying answer, but if you work in a company or if you work in a more tax-centric department or team, you'll kind of be bound by tax deadlines and when you can take holidays or not. For example, with the auditing work that I did, we were quite seasonal because of the reporting deadlines and things that we had to stick to as a team that we just needed to get the work done. Because these are kind of legal deadlines, we had kind of less flexibility around when we could take certain holidays. But then it was very give and take, where I couldn't take holidays at the beginning of the year, but it just meant that the end of my year was a lot more flexible. So I think it was a bit of a balance, but I think it just depends where you work, just because finance is a little bit more driven by regulation and rules.
So the next one is, finance isn't creative.
Probably in the middle again, just because and you've kind of reminded me of this, you can have a job that's more traditional if you choose to be in an industry that's less innovative, and in that case it could be less creative. But again, I think if you want to be creative within the realms of like the finance specific work that you do, I think there is capability to do that, because you can get quite strategic financial roles as well as quite analysis based professional roles, because there's one where you're, like I said, like using the numbers to tell a story, which can be so creative because that's completely in your reign. It's the numbers that are fixed, but like what you do with them, completely up to you. Like
your social media stuff is finance and it's creative.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, to be fair, it's like personal finance can be, and that's the challenge that I'm like trying to navigate now, is how can I translate this very traditionally boring content that doesn't insert itself very well into people's day-to-day lives. How can I make that engaging and digestible? That's definitely like a financial challenge for me.
Thanks for joining us today. Have you had a good time?
Yes, I've had a really great time.
Amazing. And just for people at home, where can they find out more about you?
They can find me on Instagram, which is just my first name, Devamsha. and they can find me on TikTok, there's a young child who's stolen my name on TikTok. My name is made up, so it should be available, but it's not. So on TikTok, I'm It's Devi, and I do a lot of my personal finance content under the Financial Hot Girl brand, so that's got its own Instagram as well.
What is a financial hot girl?
I'm glad you asked. A financial hot girl, so it was born out of early last year. Do you remember when like that girl, like the aesthetic thing was trending?
No,
it was
no,
like
no.
I think it was just called like that girl, and it was all about having these like really polished, nice wellness routines and
like
morning
clean
routines
girl
and,
type.
like clean girl thing. And I got really into it. I got really into like the wellness aspect behind it, and because I was doing all the personal finance content, and I love talking about money as it relates to like your day-to-day life, I kind of thought there must be a way to kind of be that girl, but also be someone who's like quite responsible and like goes towards their money goals. And that kind of, I think it really informs your wellness habits, and it really informs your mental health. Like your relationship with money determines your mental health. And I think there's studies that show the link between that as well. So Financial Hot Girl as a kind of brand was born out of that, because I wanted to combine caring about money with wellness habits and routines. So now it's basically a way for people to, I guess, imagine themselves, especially young women, to imagine themselves as someone who, yes, they love like looking great and feeling great, but also that they're allowed to kind of learn and educate themselves about money and be someone who is very like money driven, but also be that girl.
Yeah.
It's a way to kind of combine the two worlds.
So before we let you go, we ask everyone one last question, and that is, what does career goals mean to you?
Career goals means to me that because you're spending kind of 70 to 90% of your time or your week doing one thing that is probably earning you the majority of your money, a career goal for me would be, if I look back at myself last year, does that thing that's taking up 70 to 90% of my time, is that bringing me closer to my kind of like personal goals, and does it make me feel like I have a purpose, and is it making me feel fulfilled? Because I think it's really easy sometimes to look back at yourself a year ago and think, I'm in the exact same spot that I was a year ago, but I still have all these ambitions and dreams. So I feel like a career goal for me is, okay, well, am I taking myself closer to that with all this time that I'm putting towards this one thing?
No, that's a really, really good answer, I'd say, definitely. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
And if you're looking to start your accounting career, just head over to our website at kaplan.co.uk, and remember to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.